Now entering the squared circle pit is a man of many commas. Actor, entertainer, singer, author. Chris Jericho. Thank you, sir.
I'm here. That's me.
It's an honor to talk to you. The moment I started this podcast, the intersection of metal and wrestling, you're the first one to talk to. Anytime I talk to any wrestlers, I'm like, who's the most metal wrestler? They name Chris Jericho. And what I love about your career is you always snuck in a little metal with your career, with like the Walls of Jericho, the Halloween reference, and then transitioned into metal and now have a successful career. And I feel like this year, it's like your renaissance phase. You had your best run as a wrestler. You released a great album. You have a new book. You're a busy man.
Yeah.
You agree with all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Your facts are true. And yeah, it's been a pretty busy actual fall with a new book, a new record, and a cruise all within like a 6-week period.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like those wasn't planned that way. Just sometimes when you work on these projects, they all culminate at the same time, and you just got to go with it. So it was just a real coincidence to where when I'm posting all this stuff on Instagram and Facebook and all these other places, I have to like stagger it.
Yeah.
So it's not like all at once, because you don't want to have like a Jericho overload.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good thing. Like all of these, like the cruise was 2 years of planning.
Mm-hmm.
The record was about a year and a half. The book was about a year, and they all just kind of were deemed to be released or announced around this same time frame. So it's a little bit confusing at times, but it's all good stuff, and it's all stuff I've been working on for a long time.
And you're quite a workaholic. You've been promoting the book, and then now you're kind of transitioning into the Fozzy promotion. Yesterday, you were in 3 different states. You were the limousine riding, jet flying person with
pretty close, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we decided to do something that had never been done before, and that was to do 3 shows in 3 different time zones in 3 different cities in one day.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, with lots of planning and working on all the logistics and all the things that we had to do, when the record Judas was released on Friday, we wanted to do it the day after.
Yeah.
Because nowadays records come and go so fast, and it's all about the first week. Like, what's that first week number? And then it kind of disappears. So we wanted to do something a little bit more intricate than just putting the record out and that's it. Do something that people could talk about, that could buzz about, that could cause a little bit of a furor, so to speak.
Yeah, get the publicity going.
Yeah, I mean, publicity going, and just
tweeting.
said something just fucking cool. You know what I mean? Like something that, like, once again, like this is something that like I would have expected Van Halen to do like in 1981 or something. No one has ever done it. So we started in Fort Myers at 9 a.m. Then we got to El Paso at 3:30, and then we did Vegas at 11:30, and it was grueling. I'm feeling it today, but it was worth it. We rented a private jet, Air Fozzy, and did the damn thing, and it was really, really cool. It was really
when
cool.
you got to that Las Vegas show, were you still hype? Were you ready to go?
Yeah, I had a little bit of time off in between. And that's the thing, like, you can't be tired when you do a show. Like, I don't care if you're tired. Get out of it. Get over it, you know?
Do you have it, like, what do you do if you are feeling a little down and need to, like, pump yourself up?
Usually the adrenaline of just being in the crowd, you know, as soon as the intro music starts. For me, it's you put your suit of armor on, so to speak, and it's, you know, the stage wear. And then when the intro hits, that's when you get into it. And if there's a big crowd, and they're cheering, that gives you a lot of a vibe too. Coffee's always good. I'm a big 5-hour energy guy as well. But you know, like, hey man, tough luck. You're tired because you did 3 shows in one day. Well, that's what we asked for. We knew it was going to happen. So there really is no time to be tired. It's not like it's a surprise of what we were doing.
Yeah, and I think that's like a big theme of your new book, No's 4-letter word, is just, you know, you got to go out there and do it. You got to want it. Like, I love
yeah, you can't make excuses.
Right. And the forward by Paul Stanley, the first line, like, anything is possible if it's truly possible. And I think that's such a great quote to go by, and you're living.
Well, and the thing is too is I like Paul's take on it, because people say anything is possible. Well, let's be honest here. Like, okay, let's say I want to be the center for the LA Lakers. It's probably not going to happen. I'm a 5'10" white guy from Winnipeg, Canada, that's never shot a basketball in my life.
Right.
So that's not possible.
Yeah.
But to be in a rock band with a top 10 single. That's possible if you got talent. To be a wrestler, that's possible if you got talent.
You put in the time.
You know, put in the time, and so there really is, you know, that sort of a vibe, and you got to be passionate about it. You got to really want it, and you got to make the sacrifice. And like I said, making excuses, oh, I'm too tired, or like, you know, are you going to come to the show tonight? Well, I'll try, but no, fuck that. Either you do it or you don't.
Yeah.
You know, and that I've always been on the side of just do it.
And if you do think like, oh, I have work tomorrow, whatever, you don't really want it. Because if you really wanted it, you would be there.
Yeah, I had work today, and I had work last night, and I got fucking work tomorrow, and I'm going to be doing it. Do I want to do it? Do I want to get up at 8 in the morning and go do press for 10 hours with the new album? Well, I can think of things that are more fun. But also, yes, I want to do it because we spent a long time doing this record, and you want people to hear about it.
Right.
You want people to know about it. I mean, Chinese Democracy comes out. It's a great record, but nobody has it because Axl wouldn't do any promo for it. Even Axl Rose has to go do promotional stuff. So does Fozzy, so does Chris Jericho. And like I said, whether it's a book, an album, a cruise, I want people to know about it so that they can make the decision if they want to buy it or not. Because that's what determines if these projects that I'm doing are a success, if people buy them.
Right, and it shows people that you're worth investing in and working with, and it opens up new
yes,
avenues.
Because, you know, if it's your book company or a record label or whatever it may be, once again, using the cruise too, you got to let the people that are in charge know that if they get into bed with Chris Jericho, I'm going to work my ass off to promote the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is very valuable because there's a lot of people, a lot of bands that don't want to do in-store signings. It blows my mind, but you hear it. People bitching about doing press and all this sort of stuff. It's like, you don't want to do press? Give it to me. I'll do it.
You'll do the press.
Give it to my band. We'll do everything. We have a rule in Fozzy that we don't turn down any interview. And that doesn't mean Chris Jericho's always going to do it. It could be Billy Gray, it could be Rich, it could be Frank, it could be Paulie. But if you want Fozzy for your whatever it may be, website, podcast, you'll get somebody.
Yeah.
And that's
you'll make it happen. You'll get the name out there. And you know, one thing I really admire, like following your career, not to blow you up too much, but you always put your best foot forward, I feel. And you don't sell yourself short. Like one example I remember when Fozzy first got signed, it was to Megaforce, if I'm...
Yes.
And I remember seeing an interview where you, like, Megaforce wasn't exactly the superpower it was back in the 80s, but still, you know, it's a still value name. And I like the way you framed it. You were like, we're signed to the label that first discovered Metallica. Right. And it's like that was such a positive way of looking at it. And I feel that's kind of how people are so quick to sell themselves short whenever they have success. But one thing I feel I've learned from you is you shouldn't do that. You should be proud of your accomplishments and present them in the best light possible. If that's
well, of course, absolutely. I mean, and that's not bragging. That's just telling it like it is, you know. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, I'm always curious with you know, I feel like there is a huge crossover, and I found it here. Like I talk to metal musicians who watch wrestling all the time, and they talk to other metalheads about wrestling. Do you talk to any other wrestlers about metal? Like, did you ever have that?
But I mean, there's the people that like all types of music, you know. But yeah, I mean, I mean, once in a while, I mean, Dolph Ziggler and Bubba and I have a group text. They all talk about like Motley Crue type stuff. Mm-hmm. They're big Motley Crue guys. So we did a podcast together, a crew cast, I called it, with those two guys. And
you did one with Rollins and Sami Zayn.
Rollins and Sami Zayn. They're big music fans.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there are guys out there who really got big Cass. He's a huge music guy. He's a big Springsteen fan and loves the Beatles as well. So you'll get that, you know, certain guys that are into the tunes.
That's cool. And I love with the podcast how you do have stuff like that, and you do show this different side of pro wrestlers.
It's a different side of anybody. Like,
right.
I don't want to have... I know what it's like to get asked the same questions all the time, and you know, people always want the scoop or they want like the dirt, and I don't give a shit about that. I just want to have a fun conversation. Yeah. And you know, talking with Dean Ambrose on the tour bus about the Sasquatch and Bigfoot, he's a real big paranormal guy. Well, fuck, he's probably never had a chance to talk about that before. So I like that aspect of it. I did one that hasn't aired yet, but it's I call it the Classic Album Clash, and I did Ride the Lightning versus Master of Puppets. And it was me, Brian Posehn, comedian, and Frankie Kazarian, Ring of Honor wrestler, all three of us giant Metallica fans in different ways, and just discuss. I like that because when do you ever get a chance to put these two guys they'd never met before, but you're discussing something that we're all passionate, we know about. I like that. To me, like that really is why I like the podcast format. I like being creative with it. Like with the Avenged Sevenfold guys, when we were just drinking one night discussing, is there such thing as a perfect record? Well, what's the rules? Every song has to be an A- or better. We had this great debate, me, Johnny Christ, Zachy, and Gates, about if there's a perfect album. We did a podcast on it. It caused a huge furor of people just debating it.
People love arguing that
It's
stuff.
great, and debating. If you're a real music fan, that's when you can really come alive, you know? And that's always been my thing. Like, you know, Cody Rhodes and Zack Ryder about amusement parks.
Yeah, or the one with Cody and Xavier Wood, just about them being
But they're high school.
Yeah,
like, when I heard they went to high school and they kind of were rivals, like, that's a podcast.
Yeah, that
it was a
amazing.
huge success.
Yeah.
You know, I like that side of it.
Right, or even like guys like Haku you had.
Yeah.
And that was like, to me, I've never heard Haku give an interview. And like, it was amazing just hearing the kinship that you
And
guys
I've
had.
known King Haku since 1993. So
Yeah.
we've got stories upon stories, and I know him. He's a very funny, personable guy. Roman Reigns, I knew he'd be great on a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It took me a long time to get him, but he finally was like, one day, let's do it. Sat down with a couple beers, and he's hilarious. I love Reigns. And so I like doing that so people can hear. Like this week, I had the Singh brothers. People don't know who the fuck these guys are. I've known them for 10 years. They've been working for 10 years to get in the WWE. So people now hear this and have a whole new respect for their journey. I like to expose that.
Yeah, it's like that. It took them 10 years to be an overnight success.
Well,
right?
yeah, that's like with Fozzy. I have a Fozzy. We're a 17-year overnight sensation.
Right. Yeah, but you got to put in the work. It goes back to what we were saying
That's exactly
earlier.
right.
You know, you came from pro wrestling and you were playing arenas, which, you know, a band like Avenged Sevenfold would be used to. But, you know, you obviously didn't spring Fozzy on arenas. You had to start over and
Just like I
make
didn't
the towns.
didn't spring wrestling on arenas either. You know, I always laugh when people go, so what's it like when you play in front of 80,000 people in the WWE and then you go play a club in front of 200 people? I'm like, you're missing the point. I've also played at festivals with Fozzy in front of 80,000 people. And played a show in Macon, Georgia with 1,500 people in an 8,000-seat arena with the WWE.
Yeah.
It's not always 80,000 people with WWE, and it's not always 200 people with Fozzy, and vice versa. So there's always relative highs and lows, but the bottom line is the same. Whether it's music or wrestling, you have to entertain the crowd, and you have to connect with them and make sure they have a good time.
Right.
So
even if it's 1,500 or 10,000 or
10
100,000.
or 10,000 is our motto. you know?
Right.
Like last night, it's funny because we did El Paso as part of the Fozzy Across America, and the program director wanted to make it a special event. He only gave away 100 tickets, and you had to be invited, and you had to answer a trivia question. And he wanted it intimate, and he wanted it loud and crazy. He didn't tell us that till after. So we go out in this big venue, and there's 100 people there. It's like, oh, my gosh. But you know what? Once the train leaves the station, we're on stage now. You better fucking rock. And those people were going nuts, and they had a blast because they wanted to be there, and they were excited. And so did I. And like I said,
feed off the energy.
Absolutely. Anybody can have a great show when it's sold out.
Yeah.
It's when you have a smaller crowd that really tests the mettle of a band or wrestling too. Sometimes you go for a match and there's nobody there. My smallest crowd ever was 7 people in Rimbey, Alberta, when there was a homecoming beer bash at the college, and the guy ran a wrestling show on the same night. Well, guess where all the college kids went to? The beer bash. We had 7 people at wrestling. You don't think that was fucking hard? Seeing every single person in the crowd just sitting there? Super embarrassing.
Yeah.
But that's how you learn how to become a better performer.
You got to work past it, right? Like even as a singer, it's the same thing. You know,
Like,
you got to.
anytime you do a show once, like I say, like once you jump off the diving board, you're going in the water. And once that show starts and you're out there, if your microphone breaks or if your inner ears go out, if your guitar starts, you can't stop. You got to continue. Same thing with the men. We've had matches where the rope broke. You know, the ring breaks. It's like, you know what? You can't stop.
Yeah.
You better figure out how to work around it.
And we were talking about your podcast and how you try to get a conversation. One of maybe my favorite one that you did was with Andy Kindler, the comedian.
Amazing.
Because that guy is maybe the most negative person, or like just a curmudgeon. And I've never heard him happier than when he was on your show.
Here's another thing. I don't know Andy as a curmudgeon because we worked on this show that we did called But I'm Chris Jericho. And I just knew him as this fucking hilarious guy that we had such great chemistry. And that made the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like when I had Lemmy on my show, all I ever heard was Lemmy's not a good interview. Lemmy's not a good interview. I walked in there to his house. I set up my gear, and he was looking at the internet. Just fucking around on the internet. What are you looking at, Lem? I press record. Oh, I'm just looking at some basses. Is that a Rickenbacker, 1967? McCartney played it? Yeah. Look at this one over here. 10 minutes we're talking about bass guitars. Next thing you know, hour and a half later, we had this wicked conversation. I have to cut him off because he won't stop.
Yeah.
Because he was comfortable and because we were friends and we had the chemistry and we're not going to talk about the same old shit. And same with Andy. It's like, I don't know his political views or whatever his issues are. I just know him as my friend Andy, who's funny as hell. And we had a great conversation. There's a lot to be said when you actually have a little bit of a relationship with somebody as well.
Right. They're more open. They're not as guarded with their
exactly.
conversation.
And there's also like, I had Gene Simmons on. It hasn't been released yet. And I know he's on a press tour. And I've seen him give the same answers to the questions. But, okay, that's great because we have to talk about his product, The Vault.
Right.
Available at genesimmonsvault.com. But then I go into the direction. So we're having this great conversation, but you still get the job done from promotion.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. You're like, I understand you're promoting this. Let's talk about it. Let's work on it.
Right.
And then let's go talk about all this other stuff that we want to discuss.
And I think really it comes from a place of empathy. You empathize with him being on a press tour. You empathize with the wrestler giving an interview and not wanting to be like,
You know, The Rock? What's The Rock like?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So, anytime I do an interview to this day and someone pulls out a piece of paper with questions on it, I know it's not going to be good. And I'll tell you why. Because when people read the questions, they're only paying attention to the questions on the page. They're not paying attention to the answer.
Right.
Now, the way you're doing this podcast is the same way I do it. There's no questions. There's no preconceived notions. It's a conversation. Just like if I met you in a bar, we would talk about whatever. I don't pull out a piece of paper and start asking, you have a ghost shirt on. Tell us about that. You just talk.
Yeah.
And listen to the answers and then go on that and take it to wherever it needs to go.
Right. You treat it like a conversation. Like you don't have a notepad out when you're talking to
It
someone.
is. And if someone mentions something, I was driving my car and I got a flat tire. And then I went over here and hold on a second. What happened with your flat tire? Well, and suddenly you might have this great story about this flat tire that so-and-so got that maybe he never told before because he just brushed over it. But then you're like, well, hold on a second. What does that mean? So that's, to me, is part of the fun of doing a podcast. But then, too, sometimes you get guys like I had Mike Tyson over the summer. That guy didn't want to talk. He was giving me one-word answers. But guess what? I got to get a show.
Yeah, you got a job to do.
So then you know what I decided? All right, Mike, you don't want to talk to me? You can sit there and listen while I talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. It's about 40 minutes of me talking, 7 minutes of him giving one-word answers, and we got a show out of it. Was it great? I'm not sure it was great, but was it a great test for me as an interviewer? By far. One of my favorite podcasts as far as like, oh my gosh, I've asked him every single thought that I had, and we've only got 7 minutes. Now what do I do? And I've had personal experience with him. Mike knocked me out on Raw. Big angle. He wouldn't talk. So, all right, got to go regroup.
I've had experiences like that as well, and I look at the audio file, and it's like, oh, mine is like all in the green, and then theirs is just like a blip here.
But you know what? Here's my thing. If you're going to do an interview, then fucking do an interview.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I know that we're sitting down to talk, and you expect me to hold up my end of the bargain because you're interviewing me. If I didn't want to do the interview, just say I don't want to do it.
Right.
But if you sit down, you put up, all your gear, like you said, you need a show. So if I'm not responding, if someone asks me a real stupid question, I can lock up.
Yeah.
Because you get those guys, and sometimes they're trying to take the piss, or sometimes it's just not good. Mm-hmm. And then you got to like, okay. Sometimes I've even texted my tour manager during a conversation, go, get me out of here. 3 minutes, and then I got another call. And that's the way it works. But other times, you got 20 minutes with somebody, and you're enjoying yourself, and you get 30 or 40. And that's for me, too. A lot of times, they'll say, okay, Adam Carolla, you only got 30 minutes. Rob Zombie, you only got 30 minutes. I'm all right. 40 minutes later, 45 minutes later, they end it, and we go. Because I can always squeeze an extra 10, 15 minutes out if you do it properly.
If you're actually connecting with the person.
You do it
right.
properly.
Yeah.
And my secret to that, just quickly, is I usually leave whatever it is that they're promoting till the end of the interview.
Right. So they don't want to leave.
When I get to that minute 29, so you got a new record out or whatever.
Right. Before we go, we got to talk about this record.
And that's where you get the extra 10, 15 minutes.
I love it. And the other, not to harp on the podcast because you have a ton of stuff, but this is something I don't hear you talking about, so I love talking to you, especially here on a podcast, is that your podcast, it's like you're like the Johnny Carson of pro wrestling podcast. You'll interview anybody. And I love that you go outside the realm, like you had Frankie Kazarian on, you have the Young Bucks on, but you were smart enough to know what questions not to. It's never a awkward conversation. It's always just getting to know the person, and that's something that I relate, because I remember when, to bring it back to like the late 90s, you and Eddie Guerrero and Chris, all these people were like the glass ceiling. You're always talking about the veterans holding you down. Not you specifically, but just in general
Yeah, I never
terms.
say that.
Right.
I don't buy that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got to make your own thing. But
Yes.
what I appreciate is that you are constantly giving back. You're working with the young guy. Like when you came back, you worked
here's
with
the
Neville.
thing, though, and I love when people say that because it's as if it's some kind of a verdict and a motto of Chris Jericho. I'm not coming back to help anybody out. If I had my way, I'd beat them all in fucking 2 minutes. But I'm doing what my boss wants me to do. That's my job. I'm not noble enough to come back and go, I'm going to help. Now, once again, don't get me wrong. I understand what my role is, and I understand there's certain guys that can use the help, and I love doing that. But I also, like with Kevin Owens, it's like, oh my gosh, I know that we have great chemistry here. I know this will work. So that's going to also benefit me. And I'm also the guy that suggested that I beat Kevin Owens for the U.S. title on my so-called last match because everyone knew that I was losing. I went in politic to win because it was way better than just me losing again.
Right,
but then I also
shock value.
Yeah,
like,
but I also politic for the Festival of Friendship for him to put me out. So I'm not like there to just help people. I'm there for myself to have the best storyline and the best angle. And sometimes you get the better, and sometimes you don't. That to me is why I come back.
Well, you're right, and I didn't mean to frame it that way.
I wasn't saying you were, but other people will say that.
Yeah, like ultimately, your goal is to put out what's the most entertaining thing? What would work the best? It's not, and like with the Festival of Friendship, which to me it seems like you guys kind of figured out that like, hey, we are really funny together. Let's see where this goes. And you came up with something one week, it worked, and you like it felt like the list was like an improv thing, and it worked, and it became this whole thing.
It was something we just thought about doing in the back, like a shit list. You know, you're gonna put you on your list. So yes.
Sure.
Sorry, real quick. So we have a bunch of food set up. We have burgers, cheeseburgers, sliders,
Okay.
pulled pork sandwiches. Do you want some of that? Do you want us to order?
Yeah, I'll go up there and say we're going to do about another 10 minutes, and then we'll go deal. I'll come up there. Is it over here? Or?
It's right here in the next room.
Okay.
Do you want me to bring it
I'll
over
come out there in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. So you want the real behind-the-scenes stuff. That's it right there. We'll figure out what kind of food that we're going to eat here, too. So you could edit that out, but what I would do as a good podcaster is just leave that in there because that's the real behind-the-scenes stuff.
It's in there. It's in there. And I like how you
But
you subtly, you're like, hey, man, you got 10 more minutes.
You're a
with
good
me.
podcaster. No, so the thing with Kevin, I knew that we had chemistry.
Yeah.
I just from talking to him knew how funny he was. But I also knew, I knew 6 months before that we could take it to WrestleMania, and Vince didn't think so. But then I'm like, well, what else do I got? I think we can really move this, really make this happen. So, I mean, sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle. And last year, that was lightning in a bottle, that whole Owens-Jericho thing. It was great, but that doesn't happen every day.
And with the actual Festival of Friendship, I have to commit. It was one of the best segments of the year in terms of, going in, I was like, oh, this will be, like,
I know.
You know, like there was like 1 week of like whatever. But when I saw like the showgirls and you coming out with them, I was losing. I was like, you guys went all out with this, and I loved it.
I knew from the start that they would have the showgirls, they would have Friendship, the Magician. I don't know who came up with the creation of Kevin, that poster.
Oh my God, that was unreal.
And Vince's one contribution was he wanted that statue, the intertwined Guggenheim or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that Vince wants that.
So is that like you guys come up with it, and then everyone kind of
I came up with it, and then everyone puts in their ideas.
Yeah.
So what I wanted from that in tone was I wanted a David Lee Roth. I wanted to start as a David Lee Roth video from the '80s and turn into the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, to where it starts off, how are ya? What's going on? Zidibop, and then get betrayed.
Yeah, just the best old school Hollywood cheesiness of like. I loved it.
And really over the top do that. So people are almost like, this is too over the top, because I knew what the finish was.
Right.
And I don't care who you are. People can claim no one saw that coming.
Definitely not. I didn't. But also, you could tell from like the gasp in the crowd.
the way because there was actually a big debate that was approved by Vince, but then Vince wasn't there that week. And when he's not there, everyone has their opinions. And I was told, Kevin's just going to. I'm like, no. That's not what Vince and I discussed. Well, it's going to be too much comedy if you have the list of Owens. I'm like, not the way I'm going to play it. It's not comedy if you don't play it as comedy. Because what I wanted it to be was, if you're in a horror movie and you and I are in the woods and you get your head chopped off from behind, you don't even know it hits you. But if I see you get your head chopped off and know I'm next, that's the dread. And the audience knows you're screwed. I know I'm screwed. Oh, no. That's what I wanted, that moment of like, how come my name's on this? And that look, oh no, and boom. That's
Right, you
what
let the
comes.
audience figure it out.
The audience knew it before I did, because when I
Yeah.
pulled the list up and it said the list of KO, I
Right.
didn't see that.
Right.
But they did. That's what I loved it. The subtleties in that bit are one of the reasons why, to me, it was one of the best things I've ever done, because it was very layered and it was very intricate, and I knew exactly what I wanted from it, where no one else saw it coming until it happened.
One of the guys you said you collaborated with on that was Jimmy Jacobs,
Yeah.
and there was some controversy this week where he posted a photo and
Yeah.
and got let go. Like when stuff like that happens, it's just where it's the business. He should like he shouldn't have posted that photo. Like, do you have a reaction to that or any sort of? It's just
Jimmy's
that what
good,
happened?
and if I was there, I would have maybe tried to help him out, but it's not the smartest of moves. You know what
Yeah.
I mean, it's if I work at McDonald's and post a picture of me hanging out with guys from Wendy's and hashtag Wendy's is great,
Yeah.
McDonald's might not be too happy about it.
Right. Right. It
So
makes
you
sense.
can't just say it's the business. I think Jimmy's a smart guy, and it maybe wouldn't surprise me if he knew something was going to happen. Maybe he was getting sick of it. I don't know. I just know as soon as I saw that picture, I'm like, oh, and the hashtag BC invasion. It's like, or YB invasion or whatever it was. Oh, Bullet Club invasion.
Yeah.
You can't do that, man. I mean, you can't. And was it a fireable offense? Well, it's not my decision, but obviously
Yeah.
Vince thought it was, which tells me there was probably some other stuff that were going on. That was the final straw.
And that's the thing. People don't know
Yeah.
what's going on. They think they know just by what they see, what they read. They're not there. They don't know what the day-to-day is. And that kind of what
and
bothers
I
me.
will say this. I mean, Jimmy, last year, 2016, everything we're talking about, Jimmy Jacobs was my co-writer on all of it. All of it. And the weeks he wasn't there, I was like, oh, fuck, I don't like this. I want Jimmy here. So he's very talented, and, like, he really got me.
Yeah.
And I worked with him a few times, and I went to Dave Kapoor, and I said, I want Scoville, which is his real name, Chris Scoville, on every Jericho promo. I want to work with him exclusively, nobody else. Because that's how much I trusted his judgment and his instincts.
It was amazing comedy. Like, not just for wrestling, just comedy in general.
Just in general, yeah.
Yeah, like I thought, like the Drinking In Man and all the different
But all that
tags
stuff,
on that.
But all that stuff got heat at first.
Right. Well, I
The
think
gift of Jericho drinking in, boo, stupid idiots, boo.
Right.
It's just that when you say it, then people start loving it. Like the it thing, I wanted to just see if I could get it over, just as like a game for myself. That got over. Quiet. That got over. Just thing after thing after thing after thing. Because when you have confidence, I'm not afraid to try anything. I can get anything over. I know I can do it.
And I feel like repetition helps something
It
get
does.
over.
It does. And
And,
timing.
yeah, and with that, let's talk about your new album, Judas.
Good segue. You got about 5 more minutes, and I got to go eat before this next thing.
Well, like really quickly though, the song itself is your most successful
By
single.
far.
And
Top
I've been
10, number 9 today, we just found out.
I've been listening to the album, and one thing that sticks out to me on this album is the hooks. Burn It Down, I believe, is one of the
Burn Me
songs.
Out.
Burn Me Out. Thank you. That hook is just super catchy,
Yeah.
and it's like there's a lot of like I want to say like Motley Crue-ish 80s like riff, like just the attitude kind of just like this is a fun time. Let's have some memorable songs, and I think it's something that's kind of you don't really see too much in metal. Metal is like about being the
And
heaviest.
I would say we're more of like a hard rock band, and I think there's never been any Motley Crue influence in our band, but there's definitely I always say if Metallica and Journey had a bastard child and it was raised by AC/DC, that's kind of what our sound is like.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and I think we really worked on the choruses and the hooks of this record because we wanted it to be like Appetite for Destruction or Hysteria or Kick by NXS.
Right.
Where if the record company wanted 10 singles, we could deliver them 10 or 11 singles. And Judas, as huge as it is, was not the unanimous first choice for a single. Some people wanted Painless, some wanted Elevator. So and Burn Me Out was another one. And so we have like 2 or 3 others locked and loaded, ready to go that could be even bigger than Judas.
Yeah, there's a
So
lot of
that's
deep
the
cuts
good thing
on this.
about it.
I think Weight of the World was one of them.
That's another one. Yeah,
that
I mean,
that hook is very catchy.
there's
I
a
was
lot
singing that all day.
of great Wordsworth Ways, so epic. And I mean, there's the 3 Days in Jail. There's a lot of real catchy stuff.
And now you guys are going to be out there promoting this. I'm sure you're going to be doing a ton of touring, and then you're doing this cruise next year, which I think is awesome. I've seen metal on a
Yeah.
cruise. I've seen Rich Ward's other band, Suck Mojo, on the last 70,000.
Right.
But I've never seen wrestling on a cruise,
Yeah.
and I think it makes perfect sense
Well,
to me.
that's what I wanted to do. Fozzy did the Kiss cruise a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I got off the boat, I was like, I can do this. I can do a rock and wrestling. I was gonna call it the Chris Cruise, but they didn't like that at first. But rock and wrestling, the two things that I'm known for,
Right.
that no one else in the world can claim to have done is at the highest of levels that I have. And we could do this on a cruise ship. What if we put a fucking wrestling ring on the boat, have the matches at sea, and combine it with some great rock and roll bands, great comedians, some paranormal discussions, live podcasts, basically all the stuff that I'm into, and put it on a boat.
Right.
And that was the idea. And dude, I'll tell you what, it took me 2 years to get it going. 2 years. Actually, at one point, we were ready to announce, ready to roll, and we lost the boat. Someone swooped in and basically stole it away from us. You don't think that wasn't disheartening after working on it for a year and then having to work on it for another year? And now that it's out, fuck, I wish it was sold out today. It's not, but it's moving, and it's every day I get the cabin numbers. And some day we sold 15 cabins, and some days we sold 1 cabin, and I'm like 30 cabins, and then like no cabins. And it's like driving me crazy. But we've also got a year to go, and we're going to sell it out. I'm going to make this a yearly thing because I think people will really be into it because, like you said, it's never been done before. And if it's never been done before, then I'm the guy to do it. So I'm excited about the whole concept that we actually got up and running. So it's a hell of a lineup, too.
And to bring
ChrisJerichoCruise.com. You'll check out the lineup and see everybody that's on it and the prices, and realize that when you go on the cruise, you don't have to spend any money.
Yeah.
It's all, you don't have to pay $50 for autograph. You get all that shit. Food, all you got to pay for is booze and gambling. So if you like to drink and gamble, I can't pay for it, but everything else is taken care of.
Yeah. Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for taking some time.
Thank you, brother. Good stuff. Good job.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent
That means a
work.
lot to me.
Good stuff.
Hearing it
Who's
from you.
the biggest guest you've had on your show?
On this, well, I mean, I guess we're not.
Besides me?
You're right.
Who else, though?
Well, I've had on this specific podcast, I've had Corey Taylor. I had Frankie Kazarian on.
Nice.
I've had Kenny Omega.
Cool.
And
So,
so-
some good guys then.
Yeah. But I mean, I've talked like on my website, Metal Injection.
Oh, I know that. Is that your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
I didn't know
thankfully
that was yours.
retweet us. Yeah. So this is just the wrestling podcast I do on
Cool.
the metal site, and that
Did
I've
you just
talked.
send me a DM lately, or
No.
maybe that's metal. There's a lot of metal.
There's a lot of
that might have
metals.
been metal rejection or metal conjection or.
Yeah, but I've talked to Metallica would be the biggest band
Who?
I've ever. James and Robert.
You
I
got
interviewed.
James.
Yeah,
That's
on
pretty impressive.
the Revolver.
How much time did you get?
It was like not even
4
5
seconds.
minutes. It was like 3 questions, but just to be in the presence of
You
him,
did, yeah, that's very.
just to
cool,
tell him
man.
how much. his
Robert's
music
usually
is.
the guy that gets all the interview time with guys like us. I had Robert 3 times, and then I had Lars, which was great.
Oh yeah,
I
that
got
was
Lars, yeah,
that
so.
was an awesome one.
Well,
too.
cool, man. I'm gonna go eat some food and then go to the next stage.
Yeah, work
Thanks, brother.